What is going on, guys? I am Paul Ryan, your host of the Not ATB Fantasy Show. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our regular listeners, welcome back. With me, as always, is my co-host, the best co-host in the world, Dave Pigskin Papers Hartman. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. I was down in your neck of the woods this past weekend. Had a wedding in Austin, Texas. Got some good barbecue. Got some good Tex-Mex. Stayed an extra day and got to see the full eclipse. So that was pretty cool. But now I'm back up north.
How are you? Sounds like a good weekend, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well. I'm doing well. Dave, where can we find you on X?
Yes, on X, former Twitter, I'm at Pigskin Papers. My website is thepigskinpapers.com. I've had a little writer's block recently. I haven't written much lately, but hope to have some both fantasy and NFL content around the draft up at some point soon. Paul, where can folks find you on X, and where can they get at your Cowboys and other content?
Yes, I am Paul Ryan. You can find me on X and all my content here on Twitter and on YouTube. Dave, you mentioned that it's been a couple of weeks since we talked football and fantasy. We covered almost everything in free agency. However, we haven't had a chance to talk much about this rookie class or the NFL draft. With the NFL draft being a little over 2 weeks away, what better time than now to get some insight on this rookie class and try to get an edge in our rookie drafts? Well, here with us tonight is writer, master ranker, and co-founder of the Fantasy Football Universe. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aaron St. Dennis to the show. Aaron, how are you?
Not bad. Thanks for having me. Thanks for pushing back the show a little. I had that Rashi Rice thing come up.
Yes, sir,
it's also funny, Dave, that it's funny that you say you had some writer's block. I remember earlier in the season, I was giving someone shit for saying that. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on here. I was giving someone a hard time. I'm saying you report on just like the NFL games. You literally just have to report what happened. How do you have writer's block? But then I did the other day 163 IDP rookie bios, and with about 40 left, I sat down and I said, I got writer's block. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I play in an IDP league, so I'm going to hit you up sometime after the show to get your take on some of the hot rookies. We probably won't get into IDP much on this show tonight, but I like IDP. I'm a fan of it in fantasy formats.
I got into it because I love the peripheral positions, IDP, kicker, DST, even tight end before it became real popular. I love the ways where, the general public doesn't know it that deep and I can really find value. And that's how I got into it. And next thing I know, it was like, oh, I'm like the go-to IDP guy on my site. All right, I guess we'll go with it.
That's good because you can be the guy who keeps track of when teams switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4 or vice versa, and the defensive ends suddenly are linebackers. I'm in a league where we start one D lineman, one linebacker, one defensive back, and then two flexes that can be any defensive position. And every year, there are guys like Jalen Phillips is a good example, but there's TJ Watt, who some people in the league don't know their positions. And you have to look on the league site and it's all listed there. But, that changes for certain players just based on scheme, which is kind of crazy because the player is doing the same thing for the most part.
And if you look at any of my IDP mocks that I've done this offseason, anytime I have two similarly valued players, I look at who has multi-position availability. Oh, you do? Right there. That's what it is. Give me the dual eligibility player all day. IDP, that's the first thing I check. I will go through 10 rounds with 8 players who are defensive back, defensive end eligible, or defensive back, linebacker eligible. I love it. So
and on offense, it's just Taysom Hill. So
I have a Taysom Hill jersey. I'm afraid I have to admit it. I'm a Saints fan. I loved him the first year where he was a gadget player. Then they tried to make him a full-time player, and I was like, this guy sucks. He fumbles every third carry. I just can't do it. I loved him as a rookie or his first year with the Saints. I hate him now. Can't stand him.
Excellent. Well, I was going to ask you what team you're a fan of. So are you in New Orleans? Or are you in Louisiana?
No. I'm in Windsor, Ontario, which I'm basically Detroit. So I am a Detroit fan in every major sport. I was a Lions fan until Barry Sanders retired when I was a kid. Didn't watch football at all for probably 10 years. And when I came back, I got into fantasy football for the first time, maybe 5 years. And when I did, I just through happenstance ended up with like Drew Brees, Jeremy Shockey, Marcus Colston, dual position eligibility. Remember when he was wide receiver 3 and was listed as a tight end? And next thing I know, I'm cheering for the Saints on my fantasy squad, and I'm a Saints fan somehow. So
all right,
that's how it happens.
Excellent.
Well, it is official. We are now an IDP show. Thank you, Dave, for introducing that to the show. I played in an IDP league once, and it was probably one of my favorite leagues. I'm no longer in it, but I do love IDP format as well. It's definitely underrated. Aaron, where can we find you on X, sir?
At FF Mad Scientist, or you can also, a lot of my stuff is double posted. It's also the FF Universe. That's the site I co-created, I guess, with 3 of my buddies.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Aaron, I ask every guest this question. You kind of touched on it, but how long have you been playing fantasy football?
I've been playing since, like I said, the mid 2000s. I don't know the exact year. I think it's 2002 or 2003. I know my first team had Sean Alexander and Brett Favre on it. That tells you it's been a while. So,
yes, sir. Yes,
nice.
sir.
Unfortunately, and as you can see from looking at me, I've got you by a few years. I started playing fantasy. I think my first season was either 1994 or 1995. And I'm in the first league I was in was an auction league, and the first player I ever acquired was running back Edgar Bennett from the Packers, who was kind of like their third down back. It's kind of weird, but it got him for very cheap, and he was actually useful that season. You always remember the first player, but mine is sort of an obscure one. But Aaron, okay, so you've been playing fantasy for sounds like roughly 20 years or thereabouts, so a long time. What inspired you to start creating content?
Accident. I was a fantasy hockey analyst. I'm in Canada. Hockey's all that mattered. So I was a casual fantasy football fan. I played, at work, a family league here and there, knew nothing about it. I would download the draft kit from some guy on the internet. It was Justin Boone, actually, because the score is what's in Canada. I would download straight off of that. Excuse me. In 2020, COVID happened and shut down the NHL. After that, my fantasy hockey leagues never started back up. So I got more serious into football, and my fantasy football, I'm pretty hardcore, whether it be hockey or football, with just spreadsheet everything on my own teams. Like I'm hyper managed. I'm hyper active on everything. And one day it just kind of, a guy in my league called me the mad scientist. And I just started writing stuff. And there was a posting on Twitter from someone who said, we're looking to hire. And it was the league winners. And, I wrote their sample article. They liked it. Next thing I know, I was actually doing this pretty much full time as a full-time second job. So I got into it accidentally. I'm in Canada. I'm a hockey guy. So surprise.
Very cool.
All right. Well, I'm a big hockey fan. I'm an Islander fan. It's been a long time since they won anything, but one day when we're talking IDP, we'll also talk a little NHL when we have a minute.
I like it.
Aaron, I know you contribute for Player Profiler, FantasyPros, IDP guys, in addition to creating your own site, the Fantasy Football Universe. Can you talk to us a little bit about those roles?
Jeez, I'm all over. So like I said, me at JMolar05, at FF_Rebel, and at the PPR show, we were all writing for the same site and just decided we were doing a lot of the work. So why not start our own place? That's the Fantasy Football Universe. I do a lot of dynasty content for DLF. I do a lot of redraft for IDP guys, which is ironic because I don't write IDP for them mostly. My IDP work has actually picked up, and a lot of it is at Player Profiler. And I seem to be writing weekly articles now for Fantasy Pros, which is picking up. Also do our podcast, Fantasy Football Universe, seems to be daily, sometimes more. I'm pretty much everywhere. I do some rookie profiles too for King Fantasy Sports. I'm everywhere. I don't think there's a site that I'm not. There's a couple where I don't work because I got hired and they said, no, it's a conflict of interest. You can't work at both. But other than that, I'm everywhere.
That's very cool. In your view, Aaron, what sets the Fantasy Football Universe brand or team apart from other fantasy sources and resources and sites that are out there for fantasy players to access?
Well, For starters, everything is free. We're completely free. We are, whether it's, some of it's a little bit basic, but we are on pretty much every social media platform. We've even started to dive into Reddit lately. One of our guys, it's not me. I could not tolerate Reddit. I did that for about 3 days and said to hell with this. But in addition to that, we're also available everywhere. You can, with the exception of the trolls who want to go in my DMs when I tag, I'm sorry to say this, but the Cowboys and Eagles fans are the most aggressive. I say one thing about how, CD Lamb is ranked too high this week, and I'll get hate mail telling me that they're going to kill me and they hope I die in my sleep. So with the exception of those guys, we respond to 99.9% of, any messages you send. I had one guy where I literally made his start sit decisions every week from week 4 on. I started the whole thing every week, the whole time. He got to the fantasy championship. I told him to play George Kittle over, I forget who it was, maybe Laporta. And he opted to go with his own choice. And then he taunted me after because he made the right call. So, but for the most part, that's what sets us apart. There are 4 of us. And if you tag us in a post on any social media or on any, YouTube, we will respond often instantly because, there's always one of us on doing something.
Excellent.
Yeah, very, very cool. And then it sounds like you guys are pretty busy, Aaron, especially you yourself with, contributing to all the sites. We're in the prime of rookie season. How long have you been evaluating college players, and can you share your process with us?
You mean how long have I been doing this class, or how long in general? Like how many years?
Yeah, how many years have you been evaluating rookies overall?
Basically since, like I said, 2000 when I started. That's kind of where I first took to it and how I ended up at Player Profiler. My first forte really into it was I listened to Fantasy Football Today, but when I started a work dynasty league, it was I listened to Player Profiler, and Cody Carpentier, he did their rookie guide, and it was free for the first few years. And that's really what got me into it. And I kind of went from there. I had a model, and it's not really anything fancy. I borrow from here, borrow from there. There's some RAS scores, different measurables, draft capital. So it's kind of, I have each player, maybe 10 benchmarks for physical tools or measurables or production, stuff like that, even system they went to. And then we mix that with what I thought of them on film and all that and kind of blend it together. And that gives me my overall grade. It's nothing all that, elaborate and crazy. It's just, I put a little bit more work into it than your average fantasy player. So nothing groundbreaking here.
All right. So following up on that, we're 2 weeks and a day from round 1 of the NFL draft. You maybe give us one quarterback and one non-quarterback. Who, in your view, or based on your scouting, are the single best rookie prospects in this class?
Okay, I'm not going to give you the easy answers here. I'm not going to take the low-hanging fruit and say Caleb or whatever. For quarterback, for me, the one that, it's not going to be the expected answer unless you watch my show. Then you're going to know I'm about to say J.J. McCarthy. I know he's a system quarterback. He never throws. Well, it's not because he couldn't throw. If you watch when he did have to throw, he throws with pinpoint accuracy. But Michigan had a monster offensive line, and they just dominated everyone. And you had Donovan Edwards, you had Blake Corum. Just hand the ball off 100 times a game. They were just, destroying teams that way. So why risk it, when they didn't have Ohio State's receiving core? So why make him throw 40 times a game when you don't need to? But when he was asked to throw, or you seen him at the Combine or the Senior Bowl, Combine, he made some lovely throws. I think he's, he's also the youngest of all the quarterback prospects, and give me him with the unknown, I guess, the mystery box at 21, as opposed to the 23, 24, 25-year-old quarterbacks in, Nix, Penix, Rattler. Like, this is an old quarterback class. So he's my answer. As far as non-quarterback, Roma Dunze is my answer, to also not take the low-hanging fruit of the top 2. I guess I'll go with the third one. But for me, this was just, I always liked them. I knew they had a talented team there. Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan were great, and he was still better than them. And if you look at perhaps the most encouraging thing for me is go over to Matt Harmon reception perception. his little route tree there, it's green everywhere. It's just green. And Matt Harmon, right when I seen Matt Harmon, I said, oh, I had this guy. I think he was my wide receiver 4 or 5. And then I seen Matt Harmon and I said, oh, this is someone I'm going to have to take a look at. And I went back and just, there isn't anything he does poorly. And as an added bonus is me saying good things about him keeps me out of trouble, because one of my coworkers learned when you state that he's not a top 3 receiver in this class, his dad comes at you hard. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
you don't want that.
Yeah, avoid Papa Bear at all costs. You were a fan of Ben Sitton before it was cool, Aaron. Is there another rookie people are sleeping on that we need to keep our eyes on?
Oh, can we make this the Ben Sinnott hour for just like an hour and a half? I went on a mock draft early in the process, and I took him in the 4th round, and everyone laughed at me and said, what the hell are you doing? Nobody knows. I don't even know who that is. Where does he play? And, a month and a half later, that same site is now touting him as their guy. And I'm going, you stole my guy, you bastards. But I guess I've got a couple of receivers. Javon Baker I liked, and Ricky Pearsall. Both of them just seem like they're, really fast, physical players. They win in different ways, but those are, the 2 guys I like. A lot of times I've been seeing them in the going late in the 3rd round. And someone who I will admit I don't have a lot on him here, Jermaine Burton, is someone where I wasn't seeing him go in any of my even 3-round rookie mocks. And the other day I had Debro of FantasyPros on, and he is in love with him. So he is someone, Jermaine Burton, a player that I'm going to go back on and take a second look at. And I had, who was on my show today? Oh, I had Andrew Cooper on my show today. And he was saying the thing he likes most is that even if this guy gets day 3 draft capital, it's because it's an Antonio Brown situation where there is a long history of character concerns, and that's why people are avoiding him. And those are the day 3 guys that hit. I mean, besides Puka Nacua, but you look at Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, all guys who fell the day 3 because of character issues. And this could very well be another one here because he has more than enough talent.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. So flip side, at this point in the process, there's always at least one player that is kind of getting unwarranted praise and hype and is likely to be overdrafted, both in the NFL draft and then in rookie drafts in fantasy. You want to give us 1 or 2 names maybe of players who fit that characterization for you?
That's a tough one because I guess there was only one answer for me to this, because I find from the 109 in rookie drafts to about the 209, it's just a big clump of players. So nobody really stands out. For me, it's Blake Corum. I'm a Michigan fan, so I know it's going to sound terrible, but Jim Harbaugh, it was the system he used him in. He was using him as a short yardage goal line back, and he scored 17 touchdowns because Michigan's offensive line was dominant. If you look, when they gave Donovan Edwards the same amount of carries, he quadrupled the production. So my worry is that unless he goes to the Chargers and his old coach Harbaugh uses him in the same role, he's not going to have that role anywhere else because he's too small to profile of that. When you go to the NFL, if he doesn't have a dominant offensive line, he's not big enough to do this. He's not big enough to be a goal line back, and he's going to get smoked. So my worry is the role that he excelled at in college, he isn't suited for at the next level. Harbaugh might just try and put a round peg in a square hole and do it in LA, and that might give him a little bit of value, but he's not someone I think is long-term here. If they give him that role, the goal line role of the NFL, he's going to have tons of injuries. He's too small to do it. He's not built for that unless he's the bigger team with the bigger line going against smaller players. The other one that I didn't really prep for, but I've seen it coming as of late. All of a sudden, Michael Penix, who was going in the late 2nd round of our mock drafts, is suddenly going at the 109, 110. And I know there's been a lot of hype lately, and I'm not sure why. What is he, 24 years old? I'm not really interested in Penix at all. Like I said, there's plenty of good things about him, but I think he had a really loaded offense, a great team all around. I think he's a decent quarterback, but there's no chance. If his cost is a late 1st round pick, I will have 0 Michael Penix Jr. So I'm not sure why. Like I said, all of a sudden he shot up 12 picks in ADP in rookie draft. So I don't know if that's just the guys I've been drafting with, but we can't figure it out. I don't know why all the love for Michael Penix all of a sudden.
Yeah, and it's I'm sorry, Paul. To me, it's always surprising when there are rookie drafts before the draft, right? Because, landing spot is so pivotal. For someone like Penix, especially, is he going to be drafted to compete for a starting job right away, or is he going to be drafted, maybe to be a bridge quarterback or a behind someone like a Gardner Minshew or someone who is themselves a bridge quarterback, and what is his ultimate path to starting eventually in the NFL going to be? I mean, I think the first 4 QBs are going to be drafted, if not to start right away, to compete right away for a starting job. After those first 4, and we'll get into the quarterbacks a little more as we get into the show. In fact, I think the next question for you is going to be about quarterbacks. But, for someone like Penix and for some other players, it's so dependent on landing spot that I'm always stunned at leagues that are having rookie drafts before the draft. But I know there's some that do it.
These were all mock drafts. I'm not a sociopath.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a sociopath. Sociopath. We don't do our drafts before the NFL draft. That's insane.
Yeah, but I've heard of leagues.
I'm not doing it.
I've heard of leagues that do, and I just don't. I mean, there aren't a lot, but I just don't understand it. I mean, I guess some people like the speculation of that. It's like anything else. You're gambling on landing spot a little bit.
I had one league. One league, I think in 2021, where it was somebody else's league and they said, let's do it that way. The first pick a month before the NFL draft, the first pick in our rookie draft was Malik Willis, who later went in the 5th round. Yeah, this is why you don't do it, because someone gets hyped up. JJ McCarthy, there's lots of hype. He's going in the first round. Every year we hear one of these quarterbacks who's all of a sudden he's a surefire top 5 pick, and next thing you know, he's in the 3rd round. I think Michael Penix, he's getting worked up the board here because everyone seems to think he's going to go in the mid-teens to the Raiders. That might be possible. I think it's more likely they take him in the middle of the 2nd round. I don't know if I love that either way. The Raiders don't have much left. We've got the corpse of Devontae Adams, Zamir White, if he manages to not be usurped by a rookie. I don't know if I feel any better with Penix as a Raider, even if he gets to start from day one. I don't love that situation.
Yeah, let me before we get to Paul's question, since you mentioned it, I think on FanDuel the over-under for QBs taken in the first round is 4.5 at kind of even money. So that's kind of interesting because some of the, after we know there are going to be 4, and then there's these other guys, which we'll talk about in a second, who could get into the first round. But where would you bet on that?
Give me the under all day. Yeah, you said there should be 4. I think there's likely 3. Like Daniels, Caleb are going for sure. I think one of Drake May or JJ McCarthy also goes in the top 3. After that, if you told me the 4th one went in the top 5 picks, I'd say, okay. If you told me the next quarterback didn't go to the middle of the 2nd round, I wouldn't be surprised either. So if you told me, okay, if you said 3.5 was the line, I'd probably take the over. But at 4.5, I think it's more likely that the under hits there. I could see, like I said, I could see 3 going, let alone 5. I'm just not taking it. I know everyone's saying this about Penix, and maybe Bo Nix squeaks in, and no, thank you. I'm confident 3 will go. Probably a 4th. I'm not betting that, because that relies on what? Michael Penix is now going to be a first-round pick? I don't think so. But.
Well, you're forgetting Drake May.
No, so he was one of my 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Penix is, so I had Caleb, Jaden Daniels for sure, then Drake May, JJ McCarthy, one of the 2. I think both probably go, but if the line's 4.5, I'm going the under because I don't think Penix or Nix or Rattler gets in there. I think they're all day 2 picks somewhere.
Yeah, you touched on Penix a little bit. You're just like for him. Well, what are your thoughts on Spencer Rattler?
Penix, Rattler, and Nix for me are all the same. They're just one tier. They're all older prospects. They all had, Rattler had that awesome freshman season and then did nothing and just transferred around. He's probably my least favorite out of the 3. And that's saying something because I think Penix and Nix were mostly just, the result of being on great offenses and being, 4 or 5 year players. I'm not a big fan. Like I said, this goes back to why I love JJ McCarthy. Give me the guy who spent 3 years in there and won a national championship and had good results over the guy who did it as a senior. I don't like the guys who dominate as a senior. You're a senior. You're playing with guys 5 years younger than you. You're supposed to be dominant. So I get it where we got a Heisman runner up in there. For me, I don't want any of these. I was actually talking to a friend who was preparing for his draft earlier, and I said, I don't really want any of those three before the end of the second round in my rookie draft. I don't really think any of them stand out. If I need a quarterback, I will wait and I'll take whichever one of the three is left in the third round if I need one. But for me, there's 4 quarterbacks in this draft. And then I even, out of those, I would even, if I had to, I'd take Michael Pratt. I think Pratt's in the same group as them and he's free. You can have him in the 4th or 5th round. So I'm not a fan of any of them.
Oh, I gotcha.
I'm ageist, though, I guess you would say in college.
That's what it sounds like, kind of.
Yeah, well, it is. But, I mean, there's a reason these guys have breakouts as freshmen and then go to the NFL. There's a reason unless, some of these guys, I get it, COVID year and all that.
Right.
If you're 6 years in college, you better be coming out as a doctor. Otherwise, chances are you probably weren't that good. That's why you stayed. So,
yeah, the cautionary tale of Brandon Weeden. Who I think was 27 or he was 26 or 27, something like that.
Was it Velus Jones?
He was a first round. Yeah, Velus Jones, the receiver. Yeah. Brandon Weeden, the quarterback, and he was a first round pick and never made it in the NFL. Let's shift over to running back. And you mentioned Blake Corum earlier, but generally speaking, when you look at first round mocks across the internet, you don't see any running backs. And I think it's safe to say we probably won't get one in the first round in this draft. The incoming class, has been widely described as kind of underwhelming. There's some good players, but it's not a great running back class. And of course, NFL teams have been drafting running backs later anyway. In recent years, we don't see too many, going in the first round anymore in recent drafts. But who's your favorite and your least favorite of say running backs that are going to go on day 2? Let's limit it to that. Or that are likely to. Your favorite and least favorite running backs in this draft.
This one's tough for me because I had this all in one group of maybe 7, all ranked similarly before the combine. Obviously, I think I divided it into 2 groups here. So it was 8, and I had 4 that I put in the first tier now and 4 in the second tier. And for me, this is also going to be impacted. Like you said, whoever goes the highest in the draft in my group or the group here and gets the best landing spot, they're going to be my number 1. But my favorites right now are Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks. Those 2 I think have the highest talent, scare me the most because they have the highest injury risk, past injury history on both of them. Brooks may not play for half of his rookie season, which on a rookie, in Dynasty already, it's a short shelf life. I like Jalen Wright. I think he has Devon Achane potential. He's speedy as hell. I like Marshawn Lloyd. That caps off my 4. That is my top tier. And then my next tier is, it's Blake Corum by himself at the top of this tier because he was the one who just kind of fell out of that group. And then I had Bucky Irving and Audric Estime from Notre Dame. Those were the 2 I had in the rest of this group. They both had disastrous showings at the combine, so they've all fallen here to the next tier. Having said that, I think I'm going to have more shares of Estime and Irving than I will of Corum because they're going almost undrafted now after the combine, whereas Corum's still going middle of the second round. There's another running back. It's Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen of Wisconsin. He's kind of in there. I'd like to see where he lands. It's like I said, they're all so close together. There's 2 groups of 4 for me here, and the groups that the way I rank them is probably going to be dependent on who goes highest and who goes to the best spot. Like one of these guys in the top group goes to Dallas, they're suddenly my new RB1. And I do think based on where they go, whoever goes in round 2 and goes first, and whoever gets a good landing spot, 1, if not 2 of them are going to find their way into the end of the first round of rookie drafts. So I guess my favorite would be Jalen Wright because he's healthy and he's really fast. And my least favorite is Corum because I don't see the path to success, and he has the highest cost. So that's my final answer.
Not bad, not bad. Yeah, I'm excited to see who the Cowboys draft. We definitely need a running back, and whoever they do draft is going to shoot up the fantasy rankings for sure. With which veteran running back is in jeopardy of losing the most fantasy value on draft night in your opinion, Aaron? Give us one from the NFC and the AFC.
If you're over 25, don't buy running backs in the offseason. Just don't. You're looking, we got James Conner. Every year, I get it. Every year they say James Conner is going to be replaced, and they never draft anyone, so maybe it won't happen. Nick Chubb, I would have been an easy answer, but he may have already lost a lot of that value because of the injury. Kamara, who knows if he gets replaced? But okay, without my final answers, I think here are going to be, it's a couple of them. The two that worry me because I think they have to draft someone are going to be Devin Singletary and Zamir White. Why are we just assuming they're the day one or week one starters here for these teams? I don't think that's the case. I think they're going to get challenged here. And the scary answer that everyone's going to hate, and I've said it on one show already today, Kyren Williams scares me. The Rams had nothing invested in him. He was a 5th-round pick, wasn't particularly impressive going into the season, was like 4th on their depth chart. Somehow, between cuts and injuries, found his way into the lineup. Cooper Kupp was out of the lineup a lot of the season. He got like a 90% touch share of that backfield, the workload. Day 3 running backs or later, they just have no draft capital invested. And I did this year before with Tyler Algier, fell off the face of the earth. Dameon Pierce fell off the face of the earth. Isaiah Pacheco, at best, out of the group, salvaged some fantasy value, but I'm not saying Kyren Williams is bad. Right now, he's running back 6 on FantasyPros, and I think that's beyond his ceiling. You're drafting him under the assumption he is what he was last year every season moving forward, and I just think there's too much risk for a 5th-round pick. All it takes is them to bring in, they don't have to bring in someone good. Bring in another day 3 pick who just splits the touches with them, or bring in a veteran. I'm sure there's an unsigned veteran out there still. Just someone who takes a little bit. The true workhorse backfields don't really exist anymore in the NFL. All it takes is someone to come in and move his 90% workload to 65% workload, and suddenly you bought RB6 and he finishes as RB18. So I just think there's too much to lose at Kyren Williams at his current price.
I like those answers. I'm going to add one of my own there, which is Gus Edwards.
Yes.
He's sort of the presumptive starter for the Chargers. He's always been a capable backup who kept getting pressed into starting duty because J.K. Dobbins got hurt every single year pretty much that he was in Baltimore. But you mentioned Blake Corum early. It could be Blake Corum. It could be someone else. I do think the Chargers will draft a running back, and that Gus Edwards, is likely to lose some fantasy value on draft night.
I think it's Corum. You're right. I think 100% it's Corum.
If he can get him. I mean, if they overdraft him, but it'll be somebody there, and I don't think they're going to go into the season, especially with how much Harbaugh wants to run the ball.
Yeah,
you need more than what they have.
Yep.
So let's stick with the running backs for a second. Free agency started, and Paul and I discussed this on a show a few weeks ago. There was sort of a feeding frenzy with all these veteran running backs switching teams. It was like usually you have like the coach carousel or the quarterback carousel. We had the running back carousel more than anything else. So which of the running backs that moved around, which veteran running backs do you find yourself drafting in fantasy more often than not? You could maybe give us one from each conference.
And there are 2 completely different directions in each conference. I went for someone I just said I didn't want because I thought he is a high risk, and he is Devin Singletary in the NFC. And not because he could very well be a total waste. He's almost free. If for some reason they're that team every year that you say they have to draft someone, and for some reason they don't, he's free. You have a free starting running back like you did with him last year. So he is just a cost, risk versus reward. He's free. If I hit, cool. If not, he's a last round pick like I was doing last year with Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert hit. If he missed, I don't care. I'm dropping him after week 1. It didn't matter. The other one that I'm going to have an insane amount of shares of that I've been hitting in mock drafts, Derrick Henry. I get he's old. Everyone thinks he's washed up. He's going to be the guy in Baltimore. Over the last, 6 years with Lamar Jackson, or 5 years, whatever it is, The running backs are averaging 6.5 yards per carry, and they're not even good running backs. You've got guys in there like what was left of Mark Ingram. You had J.K. Dobbins, who was all right. You had Gus Edwards. Derrick Henry was already the best rusher, pure rusher we've seen in probably 20 years. You're going to put him on a team that averages 6.5 yards per carry. I don't care if he never catches a ball on the entire season. He might have 20 touchdowns. He might have 2,500 yards. Obviously, he won't. But I mean, and he's going in, my mock drafts for dynasty startups in like 7th round. Sure, thank you. I'll just take him. I'll plug him in as my free RB2 or whatever it is, and I'll just take everything he has as a bonus. Sure, he may die on my roster at the end of the year. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's free money.
Yeah, there was a lot of a wide receiver movement this offseason as well, Aaron. Well, which wide receiver are you trying to get off your rosters before it's too late? Give us an NFC and AFC there as well.
It's tough. I looked through some of my rosters, and there's no one I'm trying to get rid of because I've already gotten rid of all of these guys, but I had the guys that I'm not particularly high on to begin with. Gabe Davis, now in Jacksonville, Mike Williams in the Jets, and then the 2 guys in Tennessee, D-Hop and Calvin Ridley. I don't want any of them. I think the 2 I would be most likely to move right now, Mike Williams and D-Hop, you kind of have to just hope. They're going to die on your roster. You just got to hope you get one last Adam Thielen season from last year where they're a wide receiver 3 and you make peace with it. Gabe Davis and Calvin Ridley look like you might actually be able to get something for them. I'm moving them now while I still can for anything. I don't care. I want them off my team. I think they're done.
And anybody from the NFC?
No, really. I think all the ones that I didn't like were AFC players.
Okay.
So let's move. We've talked about running backs. We've talked about receivers. Let's flip over to the quarterback position. So both Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, in the last couple of years have come into each season as well, in Allen's case, like a consensus top 2 quarterback, and Herbert more like a top 5 quarterback. Both of those teams are going through a transition stage, it would appear, and both have kind of stripped their top receivers from their roster. How do you view, and obviously both of these teams are potentially, going to draft receivers in the first round or second round to restock the shelves, but how do you value these guys in Superflex as rosters stand today? And are they each, maybe a wide receiver away from being exactly what we expected them to be in the last couple seasons? Or do you have any concerns with either of them?
I don't think I'm going to have too many shares of either at cost. Josh Allen, it wasn't even the Stephon Diggs. I thought Diggs looked pretty cooked as it was. For me, it was just that they look to be transitioning the way they run that offense. They are playing it safer with him, where they're not telling him, put your shoulder down and run the ball 20 times a game. They look like they're protecting him, and that is why I've been buying more of James Cook. They look like they want to run the ball more. So I'm sure they'll draft a first-round receiver, and that'll send his stock back up. But he's going as what, QB anywhere between 1 and 3?
Yep.
If you tell me out of the top 4 QBs of him, Mahomes, Hurts, Stroud, I'm taking him last out of all of them. I just take them, even if he gets a decent receiver. Like I said, I'm anti-rushing quarterback in Dynasty. I treat them like running backs. I use them for a year or 2, maybe even 3. The second they show signs of something changing, whether it be losing a step, changing the offense, I sell them, because when that rushing floor, we seen how it happened with Cam Newton. Right off the edge of the cliff. So I always for me, it's Mahomes and Stroud first. I think I would rather Jalen Hurts still. So for me, it'll be Allen 4th, which means I'm probably not going to have any shares of him. And Herbert, the other one, where I think I have him ranked down. I don't have him really low, but he's down in the low-end QB1 range for me, which is another spot where I'm not really low on him, but I'm probably not going to get too many shares of him because, he's going higher than that in most drafts. For me, that's the one that's more the weapons scare me. He's got nothing left. Like Quentin Johnston, I'm not sold on. What do we got? Josh Palmer, Gus Edwards. Like, I get that they could go in and spend 7 rounds of draft picks getting him weapons, and maybe my store or my tune changes. But if they go in and load up on weapons for him, his cost is going to rise a lot higher than it is. And at both of these guys, I just don't think I'm going to have many shares of at cost, because I don't see really a way where they can beat the guys in their range.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy with Herbert when you look at, like his over the last couple seasons, his top 4 pass catchers are Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett even, and they're all gone.
Yep.
So, and I like Josh Palmer, but I like him as a third receiver on the team, maybe a second receiver. They do have the 5th pick, and it'll be interesting. I think I kind of feel like the draft starts at pick 4 with the Cardinals. And depending on what they do, it might start at pick 5 with the Chargers.
But whether they go tight end at Bowers or they go, say, Neighbors, it doesn't really, it's going to be a nice, shiny new piece. But Harbaugh coming in, we hate Michigan players coming into the NFL because we say, look at how Harbaugh runs an offense. Look at how it was in San Francisco. Look at how Harbaugh runs an offense. This is not going to be a high pass. He's not going to have Herbert out there slinging the ball 50 times a game. He is old school, play defense, run the ball down their throat. I just don't see the pathway for a top 10 finish for Herbert this year, even if they get Bowers or a high-end receiver here. It's just not enough.
Yeah,
interesting. I might need to send out some offers for Herbert or Josh Allen, it sounds like. Earlier, Aaron, we talked about the big 4 rookie quarterbacks. In a perfect world, where would they land in the draft if it was up to you?
I kind of went boring here. I went with Caleb to the Bears because let's not get crazy. Caleb's going to the Bears. I have Jaden Daniels. This one's not really realistic. Unless the Broncos trade up, I have him going to the Broncos. I don't mind him there. That's not going to happen unless they trade up. And then I have McCarthy going in the early teens to the Vikings. And then what you're asking what happens here with the Commanders, Patriots, Raiders, they are all going to Drake May, and not necessarily because I like any of those spots, but because Drake May is my least favorite of the 4. So send him to the teams I don't want. I don't want the quarterback. I don't want the quarterback that goes to Washington, that goes to New England or to Vegas. So, give the 3 good quarterbacks to the 3 decent offenses and let Drake May go, flounder on one of those rosters like Sam Howell did.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because of the quarterback needy teams. The Vikings are so far and away the most loaded with offensive talent and, and with a coach who seems to know what to do with offensive talent. And, kind of conventional wisdom right now is that, the top 3 teams in the draft all need quarterbacks. They take 3 of them, and then the Vikings trade up to get whoever the 4th one is, which in a lot of scenarios I've seen is likely McCarthy. And we've talked about landing spot, at least for the first year, give me the guy in Minnesota versus, I mean, the Bears actually are an okay landing spot right now with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet, and they have the 9th pick. So who knows what else they add. But of all those quarterback needy teams, the Vikings would appear to have the most firepower for a rookie quarterback to excel.
I agree. Like I said, the one I want to avoid is New England. Having said that, it's not foolproof, so don't dock someone for New England because, like I said, it's not foolproof. Last year, I said the same thing for whatever quarterback goes to Houston, I don't want. Bad team, defensive-minded coach. Well, that didn't work out so well. CJ Stroud was Rookie of the Year. He was Rookie of the Year, right? I think.
Yeah.
Feels like it. Yeah. So there you go. So it's not always a foolproof plan, but for now I'm avoiding whoever goes to New England. He would be my least favorite out of the landing spots, the quarterbacks in their landing spot.
Yeah. 100%. So we've talked a few times about landing spot and how important it is. And it's often a kind of an underrated aspect of fantasy success, is players landing in the right system, right situation, right coach, right philosophy, that kind of works for their skill set. Is there a particular rookie where you think landing spot system, that they're going to be especially dependent in terms of their success as rookies on where they land? And you could, if you want to do one quarterback and then maybe one other player or however you want to answer it, Aaron, is fine.
Well, my quarterback answer was the same as last question. It's Drake May, because I think he's the one who goes to New England. And I get it. Like I said, I can be wrong. New England could be a better landing spot, but they don't have much. And we've seen whether if it's a bad coaching system, even it's rookies. We've seen Jacksonville may have ruined Trevor Lawrence, who was a generational prospect. I don't think they have, but he's not what we thought he would be. We've seen what happened to Zach Wilson. So the wrong landing spot can do a ton of damage. So I'm more about avoiding the bad landing spot with a quarterback. The other ones, it's for me, they're all from the 109 in rookie draft. So basically any of their wide receivers who aren't the top 4 of Harrison, Neighbors, Adunzi, I guess top 3 there. You get into the next group, and then pretty much all the running backs, they're all landing spot dependent. That's why we see a spot from 109 to 209 where it's just pick your player, pick whoever you want. They're all the same. You look at them. I don't know how many times in my rookie bios I wrote big guy, fast guy, poor route runner. It's like the same cut and paste over and over. Big, fast, poor route runner, or bowling ball shaped running back, lacks high end speed, this, that. They all have the same flaws. And they're all highly flawed prospects. So this, more than any year, I think landing spot's going to be the most important. And like at the end of the day, you just pick your guy, because we've seen how, a bad landing spot doesn't necessarily work, or it doesn't necessarily look promising. And then the starter who was never going to give up, carries, he goes down, and next thing you know, you have a league winner. So there's still a considerable amount of luck. The worst landing spot isn't always the worst landing spot. Who would have said last year, like I said, who would have said CJ Stroud going to Houston? Who would have said Kyron Williams the year before in the Rams? Those didn't sound like great landing spots to me. So a lot of this, as much as we hate to admit it, is still luck involved, because it's a physical sport and we can't project injuries. But
yeah, and I do think that it tends to impact the quarterback position more than other positions, because but you look at a guy like Garrett Wilson, who's been great, all things considered, but he hasn't put up great fantasy numbers because that's been such a bad landing spot for him in his first 2 seasons.
Same with Olave in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I thought they would both be surefire, at least top 12. They're kind of teetering on top 12 value, but their landing spot has impacted what they should have been.
100%. But you see, you do see it with receivers and running backs, but you see it quarterbacks, like you said, it can ruin them. And we've seen it multiple times. Even like look at Baker Mayfield, right? Who's now a decent starting quarterback, and it took 2 bad landing spots, really before he found one where, he can thrive a little bit. So, and he's lucky he got those additional chances.
Yep.
Draft
capital. That's why draft capital means more, especially with quarterback. It means so much, because he got those extra chances because he was a first-round pick. What did he go, 2 overall, Baker? Or was he 1?
One.
Okay,
One.
So
before Josh Allen, before Lamar Jackson, before Sam Darnold, so that's okay. But he was the first pick in that 2018 draft.
Yeah, so it's rookie season. People love to make trades around this time of year, Aaron. Is there one rookie you're trading the farm for?
No, that's the short answer. I like rookie picks because of I want value players. I am also a fan of trading. Don't trade if you're trading away rookie picks. That's not what I'm saying. Don't trade them away now. Trade them away when you're on the clock or right before the draft, because they're only going to go up in value. But if you don't want the picks like I do, I will load up on picks and then sell most of them, because I would rather have the known commodity player in my roster than the FOMO player. Give me what's the old saying? Bird in the hand better than 2 in the bush. Give me the guy I know is good over. Oh, but someone said earlier, they were offered Tank Dell for the 109. Give me the 109. I know Tank Dell is good. I get it. He's small and was hurt, but the 109 could be a decent, the RB1 in this class. It could be Franklin. They could be good, or they could never make an NFL roster. I don't know. Give me the known commodity every time. So I am not trading the farm for any rookies. I want to be trading away veterans to steal rookies. I'm not trading the farm. But if we are talking a rookie that I want to target at cost, I have 3 no wide receivers, because I think the wide receivers are all being driven up pretty high. I have JJ McCarthy, who I'm taking mid to late first round, landing spot dependent, draft capital. He falls out of the first round in the NFL draft, wiped out what I said. Jalen Wright, like I said earlier, he is one of my top running backs in this class. He's the healthiest. He's also going the latest. You can get him end of the second, middle of the second, even into the third. And tight end, Ben Sinnott. I'm sure you've seen that one coming. Everyone's been asking me, what do you think of Jatavian Sanders in the second? Well, I think I like Ben Sinnott in the third or the fourth a lot more. So those are the three guys I am leaving all my mocks with. I don't know if I'm loading up. I'm more value hunting in this. And a lot of them, what I'm loading up on here, I'm loading up on trading back to load up on additional picks to get these guys. Why take a guy I'm not convinced at 205 when I can trade back to 208, grab Wright and an extra pick? Why take Sanders in the second round, trade back a little bit, get an extra pick, grab Sinnott? So that's my answer. I'm loading up on extra picks to trade down out of the top 8. Once I'm outside the top 8, it's where I'm going. The top 8 players, those are your studs in this class, I think, in whatever order you choose to go with.
So let me follow up on that and ask you a question that this one's a little bit off the cuff, so you won't have prepared for this. But I'm just curious, because this is about the 4th or 5th, it sounds like, year that you've been really charting players and scouting for rookies for Dynasty. In your mind, and this is going to be an offense-heavy draft, although a lot of that is because of there may be 8 or 9 tackles or offensive linemen that go in the first round. But, I've seen mocks where there's only one defensive player taken in the first 10 picks in this draft. How excited are you about this draft forget the offensive lineman, but just from a fantasy perspective in terms of the quarterbacks and skill position players? How excited are you for this draft and this crop of rookies versus the other drafts that you have that you've scouted in recent years?
I think fantasy people are going to be disappointed when they see the actual round 1 play out. Like I've seen on Mock Draft Database, some of the fantasy sites, and they'll have 32 picks and there will be 5 defensive players mixed in. That's not going to happen. I know we're saying 5 quarterbacks and, 7 receivers and a tight end. No, I think you're going to see a 50-50 split. You're going to see 4 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, a handful of linemen. There are some defensive lineman studs who are going to throw a wrench in the fantasy players' plans here, and they are going to be pushed up. Some decent corners, linebackers. This is going to end up more like a 16 offense, 16 defense first round. And I think a lot of those picks that everyone's saying, well, all these receivers, they're all going to get late first round draft capital. How many years have we been saying this? Baltimore, Philly, Buffalo, KC, at the end of the first round, they're all drafting rookies. None of them are receivers. None of them ever draft receivers. I mean, sure, Buffalo looks like they might, but I don't think everyone always says we're going to see a run of 5 receivers to end and they're all going to be great landing spots. That's not going to happen. Buffalo will probably take a receiver and then the rest of them are going to fall into the second round. Then you're going to see some running backs. So I think the cliff of the 108, like I said, those guys are all going in the first round. After that, I think you're going to see that group of 10 players that are next really get spread out because I think some of them are going to fall because I think as the IDP guy, a lot of people are underestimating how good this defensive lineman class is, especially they are loaded. I think 1, maybe 2 creep into the top 10 there, but they are loaded. You're going to see a whole bunch and you could see once we get to Minnesota at maybe 12, we could get to the early 20s before another offensive player goes off the board. There's a stretch where it's, and even at the end where we've got Lions, what are the Lions need? Cornerback, defensive end. You're going to see a lot of teams load up on high-end defensive prospects here. So I think fantasy analysts are going to be disappointed in how day 1 plays out.
Interesting. All right. Well, thanks for your perspective on that because, I'm obviously I follow this stuff as well, but not as closely on the dynasty side and on the rookie side. And, there's so much hype around the NFL draft. I mean, I remember this is going to sound like one of those old war stories because I'm the old guy here, but I remember when like the draft wasn't on television, it was basically like on the radio. And not that many people followed it. And this is in the 1980s. It was.
I remember in the 90s, getting the update the next day in the newspaper sports section where they printed the list of who was drafted.
Yeah. And the draft now, of course, is like, the draft on Thursday night will be one of the most watched sporting events of the year. I mean, it just will be. The NFL is king. The NFL prints money, and there's just so much hype. I give Mel Kiper credit. He created an entire industry, basically.
Yes, he did. Absolutely.
And that guy just was a self-starter. He started a newsletter and sent it to NFL teams and sent it to, sports pages and stuff. But anyway, it is interesting how this has, people get very, and with the eruption of the popularity of fantasy football and dynasty leagues in particular, there's just that much more focus on the NFL draft and that much more excitement around it. So, I think, from fantasy players to fans of teams that are, that are bad NFL teams that have picks in the top 10 or 12 and are, hoping for that. It's not just the first round, obviously, but hoping to hear that name on Thursday night that's going to change their franchise. It's always an exciting time this time of year. In the NFL, it's amazing the way the NFL can control the sports narrative. The season ended 2 months ago, and it's not starting for another 4 months. And it's, it feels like on, at least in the circles I'm in of sports fans and Twitter and things like that, it's all anyone talks about. So
okay, so over in Windsor, there's billboards for the NFL draft everywhere. Granted, it's in Detroit. On the TV, it's all advertisements for the NFL draft. I live in Canada. The NHL playoffs start next week, and it's NFL draft everywhere. So that tells you all you need to know. Canada.
Yeah, I hear you. Are you going to the draft?
I am hoping to. My kid has surgery Thursday morning. Not sure how it's going to
everything is okay with that.
Yeah, just oral surgery. So.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. Well, I hope you get to go since it's right in your neighborhood there.
That's the plan, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So getting back to the players here for a second, we just have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get you out of here. Which rookie not named Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Malik Neighbors do you think has league-winning potential this year? And again, landing spot's going to matter, but just looking at the talent, who do you think?
It's been the 4 non-elite rookies I've been touting all show. One at each position. J.J. McCarthy, Rome Odunze, Jalen Wright, Ben Sinnott. Best value. I mean, for me, league winner doesn't necessarily mean they are going to be, Sinnott doesn't have to be the tight end one. He doesn't have to be Travis Kelce to be a league winner. If you draft him in the last round, but he gives you middle of the pack tight end, he's a free square. Like if Odunze comes in and gives you wide receiver 2 value and you draft him in the 9th round, that's league winning potential. Like not everyone, Kyron Williams, you got him off of the waiver wire. Not everyone's going to be off the waiver wire and be, RB6. So I think anyone who massively outperforms their draft slot is a league winner for me. And those 4 all have the potential. Obviously, like you said, draft capital, landing spot dependent. So don't hold me to it. It could all go haywire. JJ McCarthy falls and suddenly he's Denver in the 2nd round. He's not nearly as enticing.
That's fair.
Come on, Sean.
In the last couple of years, Aaron, the term cornerstone has been used to define certain players in dynasty leagues. Who are your 4 cornerstone players in dynasty? Give us one quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and a tight end or a flex.
Okay, I have 2 sets of answers. I wasn't sure how you meant this. You talking rookies or veterans?
Veterans. Just it could be, if you have a rookie in there, that's fine. But I just meant cornerstone. It doesn't matter if it's a rookie or a veteran.
The 4 guys, one at each position, I would most like to have on my dynasty roster. CJ Stroud, Breece Hall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Trey McBride. They all have elite upside. They've all had great seasons. They all have just great futures ahead of them. No real competition at their position. Those are my 4. If you could, obviously there's the Justin Jeffersons, but really like with not knowing who's the quarterback in Minnesota this year, I don't know. The gap between Jefferson and St. Brown isn't what it used to be. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to pass on Jefferson for St. Brown, but give me St. Brown. So like I said, it's obviously, if I have the number one pick, you just tell me I can take the first 4 players. You take the highest end ones. But I like Stroud, Brees, St. Brown, Trey McBride.
I like those. All right, give us a bold call draft night edition.
Raiders spend their first 3 picks on offense, and all the people that we are currently booking as their QB, running back, and wide receiver 1 are all out of a job. They go Keon Coleman, Michael Penix Jr., Trey Benson to revamp the entire offense and still suck.
Oh man, that'd be quite the feat there to draft those types of players and still suck.
Yep. Well, that's the Raiders for you.
True. Okay, this is a sort of a new thing that I came up with. Give us a guest nominee, somebody you'd like to see on the show, somebody you think would be a great to come on and have a conversation with, talk some fantasy, talk some rookies, just talk some ball with us.
Okay, I had 2 answers for this as well when I seen it. What time zone are you guys in?
I'm in Central
Standard. I'm Eastern, Paul is Central, but we'll talk football at any time of day.
Okay. See, and that's why when you originally sent me 10 p.m., I thought for some reason one of you was in the UK. And you know what you write for King Fantasy with me, right?
I do, yes.
Okay, and see, and that's the thing. For some reason, I've got it in my brain that everyone who works for King Fantasy is in the UK because that's where they're based. So I was like, why does he want to do it at 10? That's like 4:00 in the morning there. But so my answer would have been Jeremy Shulman at FF_Rebel from my show because he's in Amsterdam, so he would have been on your time. But if you're in, U.S. time, Jay Moeller 05, Jesse Moeller, he's another guy. Basically, I recommended my 2 co-hosts. And if you want a third, at the PPR show, SC Romero. All 3 of those are great. Who's another guy? You know who?
I've worked with both of those guys, Jesse and PPR show, so they're definitely great.
Okay,
great
well, so then you need to get Jeremy on. That's the answer because Jeremy is. As long as you promise to spend the entire show insulting him for liking Calvin Ridley, he's pretty good. My personal favorite, I think, in all the years I've done a podcast, was having Pat Fitzmaurice on my show. Love that guy. Met him at the Expo. He's awesome.
Okay, what's I'm familiar with Pat Fitzmaurice. What is Jeremy's at on Twitter, or X rather?
At FF_Rebel.
Okay, and he's in Amsterdam, you said?
He is. So he normally, I record with him. I'm in Eastern time too. So I normally record with him around noon or on my day off. So he's long past in bed right now.
I hear you. Okay. Now, Aaron, here's the part where you talk about any and all content that you're creating right now and where we can find it, sir.
Oh, I don't know if we have that long. I'm writing at FantasyPros, DLF, Player Profiler, IDP guys, King Fantasy Sports. Lately, we've got our own startup going since January. We, like I said, the 3 guys I just named, Jesse, Jeremy, SC, we've got our own startup. That's Fantasy Football Universe. We have been pouring everything into it. It's funny. I've seen a lot of fantasy companies this week saying, hey, we're rolling out our rookie guide starting this week. Well, we started ours back in January and we're 150 players deep into this. So if you want any of them and you don't want to wait, head to the fantasyfootballuniverse.com. We are I think we went 93 players deep on offense and 57 deep on IDP. So that's where all our content is there. And the FF Universe on YouTube. As like I said, every single one of the 150 profiles we did, they also come with a video breakdown. So we've been going, it's only 4 of us, but we've been going pretty hardcore all off season because there is no off season in Dynasty.
Sounds like you're the busiest man in rock and roll.
I am. This is what happens when you're a newly divorced single dad. My kid, we can't really go anywhere. He'll go in his room and he plays, with his friends on Fortnite or whatever. So I found I was spending a lot of time just sitting on my butt playing fantasy. So I am using all that idle time instead of sitting there and dwelling on all the things that have gone wrong. I turned it into something. So I spend all my time on the computer and podcasting and writing, and it seems to be going well.
That's great.
Well, Aaron, we appreciate you sharing the time with us, man, and the knowledge. I know your time is valuable, man, so thank you for coming on. Reminding people they can find you on Twitter, sir.
At FF Mad Scientist. Again, thanks for having me. It was great. Thank you for bumping me here. Like I said, I don't normally have to bump at all, especially this late at night. I had no other plans aside from putting my 9-year-old to bed who's next to me. We're in his room. He has the good computer because single parent life. But like I said, the Rashi Rice update came up and Drew Davenport, the lawyer there. I said, oh, we got to get this done. So he had to wait for his family survivor night to end with the kids there. So he said, I can do 10. So I said, okay, well, we'll get this in. So thank you. I appreciate you guys bumping it back 20 minutes or a half hour. And thanks for having me.
Yes,
thanks
sir.
for being on. It was a really good convo. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Dave, remind the people they can find you on X, sir.
Yes, they can find me at Pigskin Papers and my website, thepigskinpapers.com.
Guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on X at Paul_Ryan15. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you guys next week.